Singing a Disney classic, here are DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Wiggle your tongue until you hear the word is very delicious. And the next time, if you say it real loud, it makes it sound precocious. And the first time, we're all having fun and you don't want to miss this. Let's take an undiddly break.
It is 10:59 p.m. on Thursday, December 12th, 2013, and I am about to head to the ArcLight Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard in beautiful Hollywood, California, to catch a midnight screening of Saving Mr. Banks.
Stepping time, come on, mighty, stepping time.
So as you can no doubt surmise, I've been waiting for this film for quite a while. Ostensibly, pretty much my entire adult life, I've wanted to see not so much a Walt Disney straight-up biopic, but more just, I've always wanted to see a movie about the Walt Disney Studios when Walt was alive, you know, about Walt and Roy and the Sherman Brothers and the Nine Old Men and Bill Peet and Don DeGrotty, and I know very few of those people are actually in this film, but a man can dream, damn it. But, you know, I know that kind of film would likely only hit the screen in the form of a Walt Disney biopic, and if you were to do a Walt Disney biopic, if you tried to cover his entire life in one film, yeah, I just don't think it would work, because too many, a miniseries maybe, but if you tried to squeeze it all into 2 hours, you know, too many very important events would just become bullet points. So the wise thing to do when depicting Walt Disney in a movie is focus on one event in his life. I always thought that, but I always thought that one event would be the creation of Mickey Mouse, or the making of Snow White, or the opening of Disneyland. The negotiations with P.L. Travers over Mary Poppins seemed always like the 8th or 9th most likely scenario, but shows what I know. But actually, I think that could be even more interesting, because all the stories I mentioned fundamentally are struggling dreamer makes good, you know, and that's what 99% of all biopics are. They're just, you know, we've seen it a million times. This movie depicts an aging world conqueror. Everyone thought Snow White would fail. It was a huge triumph. Everyone thought Disneyland would fail. It was a huge triumph. He got into the ground floor of television. He was making hit film after hit film. Everyone just loved the guy. You know, he was a TV personality. He was not used to being told no by this point in his life. And suddenly, here's P.L. Travers saying no a lot. So that could be really interesting. So this is basically my Hobbit. This is the film I've been waiting for all year. This is my Phantom Menace, hopefully without the crushing disappointment, and very hopefully without the Jar Jar. The critics have been a little mixed on this film so far. You know, half the reviews I've read have been, you know, just loving it, thinking, oh, it's a wonderful film. The other half have accused it of being basically a 2-hour Disney commercial, which was kind of inevitable. I mean, a film like this, I mean, it's like complaining that the movie Ray is just a 2-hour commercial for Ray Charles Records. Of course it's gonna be. You know, that's the whole point of biopics like this, is to celebrate, you know, someone's work and what it has meant to people. Doesn't mean it's a great genre, but great things can be done in that genre, I think. Emma Thompson's name is built above Tom Hanks. That almost never happens. I can't even remember the last time Tom Hanks was in a movie where he wasn't the star. You pretty much have to go back to Dragnet in 1987.
They got the girl all frightened. Now that's not nice. I think she is the subject of a sacrifice.
And maybe Tom Hanks is legitimately the best they could do, but all the trailers and TV spots and clips I've seen so far, he just isn't disappearing into the role of Walt like he ideally should. And put some perspective on that, I was similarly skeptical when I heard Jason Schwartzman and B.J. Novak would be playing the Sherman Brothers. I mean, I think my first reaction to that was, you know, what, were the next two Jews the director pulled out of a hat not available? But they have disappeared into the roles in the clips I've seen, especially Jason Schwartzman as Richard Sherman. And my biggest concern about this movie is the ending. Because fundamentally, this is still a Disney movie. It wasn't always developed as a Disney movie. Disney bought the script. The script won, like, the 2011 Blacklist Prize for Unproduced Screenplays. In fact, it was originally developed as more a straightforward P.L. Travers biopic, but then one of the producers told the writer, look, people today really only know P.L. Travers for Mary Poppins, and they only know Mary Poppins for the Disney film, so focus on her 2 weeks with Disney. But Disney did buy it, and they are releasing it. And now the screenwriter and director are claiming that Disney hasn't changed much. They didn't get the same situation P.L. Travers got. I don't know if that's the truth, or if that's just a party line they kind of have to say if they ever want to work with the mouse again. What do all Disney films have in common? Happy endings. You know, across the board, every film released under the Walt Disney Pictures banner, no matter how dark and fucked up and brutal and twisted it gets, and some Disney films get pretty well into all four of those, you have to end on an up note. You have to send the audience out smiling. And that's what concerns me, because from P.L. Travers' point of view, if they're really telling this story from P.L. Travers' point of view, as well as Walt Disney's, and it's looking like they are, from her perspective, the making of Mary Poppins the movie does not have a happy ending. She famously hated that film. She was quoted somewhere as saying, it was quintessentially Disney. It was all fluff and all surface, and it was, beautiful and brightly colored and meant nothing underneath, which I don't agree with. I mean, I just watched that movie again today, and it really holds up. I mean, it's not exactly the Seventh Seal. I mean, the meaning in it is kind of lightweight and kind of, it definitely takes a backseat to the entertainment, but it is there. It does deal with issues of mortality and, at least subconsciously, and making sure you spend enough time with your kids. This, of course, being before the 90s, when every kids movie was about an adult comedian learning to spend more time with their kids, and it just destroyed that message. But getting back to P.L. Travers, there's one story which may or may not be apocryphal of, P.L. Travers went to the premiere of Mary Poppins at Grauman's Chinese Theater, and at the after party, everyone's shaking Walt's hand. Oh, Walt, this is the best film you've ever made. This is going to be your legacy, da-da-da-da. P.L. Travers approaches him and says, well, I must admit, Julie Andrews was very good as Mary Poppins. But Dick Van Dyke was all wrong as Bert. You've got to recast and reshoot. At that point, Walt looked at her for a few seconds and patiently explained what a premiere is. So anyway, Saving Mr. Banks has a few options. They could either lie and say that P.L. Travers did like it. They could kind of gloss over and whitewash it and not even bring up whether or not she liked it, because the world liked it, so what else matters? Or they could live with not having a 100% happy ending this time. I'm not sure I trust them to do that, but it would really impress me if they did. Or they could come up with some fourth solution that I can't think of because I'm not a professional screenwriter. One last thing that really intrigues me about this movie is it's rated PG-13. The original Mary Poppins was made before the MPAA regulations, but it still, on re-release, was rated G. And if you get the Blu-ray today, it still says G on the back. So I have to wonder what is in this movie that puts it 2 whole notches above that. I mean, it's not like Walt Disney Pictures has never released any PG-13 movies. The Pirates movies were all PG-13. The Lone Ranger was PG-13, though that probably should have been R. I think the National Treasure movies might have been PG-13. I don't know offhand. Don't quote me on that. But those were all action movies. And more specifically, those were all Jerry Bruckheimer-produced action movies. This is a drama. Bruckheimer's name is nowhere near it, so I have to wonder, what is in this film that is so mature that it couldn't get a PG? This is no more than an educated guess, but I think it's PG-13 because it depicts Walt smoking. Which it has to, in my opinion. I mean, if you're gonna do a film depicting Walt Disney with any modicum of honesty, you have to depict him smoking 2 or 3 packs a day, as he did. It's what killed him. You know, he died of a tumor in his lung because he smoked too much. And I've read that this film does, in fact, depict Tom Hanks as Walt Disney smoking, but of course, God forbid any child see that, because as we all know, children will replicate absolutely everything they see on a glowing rectangle. Actually, this is true. I once knew someone who told me the story once of the time when she was a 5-year-old girl, and she watched Mary Poppins and got the bright idea to jump off the roof of her house with an umbrella open in the thought that she would fly. She broke a couple of bones, went to the hospital for a few days, nothing irreparable, but that movie is rated G. So if we really are sticking to the premise that kids will emulate absolutely everything they see on a glowing rectangle, the movie that tells them they can fly through the sky by jumping off the roof with an open umbrella, that's fine. But God forbid, God for fucking bid, Mary Poppins light one up while she does so. Anyway, I've been jabbering on long enough. I'm almost at the theater. After the movie, I will give you my quick initial reaction to Saving Mr. Banks. I don't think I'm going to do a full review this time because, Escape from Tomorrow was pretty explicitly about the Disney parks. This one has one scene, from what I understand, that takes place at Disneyland, that was actually shot at Disneyland, which is pretty fucking cool. But I will be back after the film with my initial reactions.
Cut every corner, it is really not so bad.
I really liked it, but I'm worried that I might be prejudiced. I'm worried that my years of, super Disney fanboyishness might be unfairly tainting my opinion of this film. If you're a huge Disney fan, you should definitely see it, although you're probably going to see it already. If you're kind of a medium Disney fan, if you're a sucker for sentimentality, then you'll probably like this film. Like, if you liked The Blind Side, for example, which is from the same director, you'll probably like this film, especially if you're a Disney fan. If you just hate Disney and everything it stands for, and you're not, and the term Disney magic just elicits eye rolls from you, I should probably put more light in here. Yeah, that's better. Then you probably won't like this film, because it kind of assumes that you're going to be on Walt's side through all this, and it does make a pretty compelling case for Walt's side. Let's start with what I liked. Emma Thompson was superb as P.L. Travers. She was just so delightfully persnickety, and so it was kind of like Basil Fawlty in a way. And not just because she had an assistant named Polly, but it kind of reminded me of that kind of, entertaining frustration, or more specifically like Mrs. Richards from that one episode of Fawlty Towers, the one who kept saying, "What? K-C-C-K, what? What on earth are you talking about?" That old woman who's just, it's so entertaining to watch. You'd never want to meet her in real life, but it's so entertaining to watch her, frustrate fellow fictional characters. Tom Hanks as Walt Disney, at times I was seeing Tom Hanks. And at times I was seeing a character, but it was never quite Walt Disney. Now, it is a fine performance. I have no qualms about the performance, except maybe the southern accent. It's just, even the southern accent, that was fine. It's just not Walt. If you're looking for a really accurate and really dead-on portrayal of Walt Disney, this most assuredly ain't it. The best parts of the movie, and there's far too few of them, were the scenes where, P.L. Travers and, Bradley Whitford as Don DeGrady and Schwartzman and Novak as the Sherman brothers are just sitting around the table hashing out the script. I loved those scenes. I could have seen a whole movie just of that. Probably would have been a better movie, quite frankly. It's just so entertaining to watch these people butt heads. She just will not let anything go. She finds fault with everything. It's just so... and you're just laughing at the sheer awkwardness of it. It's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, almost, of just these people bickering over the tiniest little things, but they're making mountains out of molehills left and right. I knew there was going to be scenes about P.L. Travers' backstory, of her as a little girl in Australia. I was worried I wouldn't like those scenes. The first few of those scenes surprised me, because I did like them, largely because of Colin Farrell as her dad. Her dad, in the first few scenes, is just so charming and so jovial, and you know, he's the father we all wish we had. Spoiler territory begins now. Please turn off the video if you don't want spoilers. The scenes later where he's dying, yes, I feel bad, but I guess it doesn't amount to enough poignancy for me. The Colin Farrell scenes, they just became more and more unpleasant as time went on, and that's because, you know, this character we liked was dying. I didn't like the idea that it was just reduced everything P.L. Travers was talking about to just daddy issues. And I started getting just more and more bored with the backstory, because it was just so riddled with cliches. You know, it was riddled with the same, you know, troubled childhood cliches we've seen in a million Lifetime movies. And I didn't want to see that. I wanted to go back to the studio, you know, give us more bickering, give us more, you know, these people disagreeing. I really like that stuff. The movie gets more details right than it gets wrong, I'll give it that much. But the details it does get wrong are fucking infuriating. Some of which are unavoidable. I mean, the scene when they're at Disneyland, and it is really just a 5-minute scene. It's not the whole movie. They'd be on the carousel, and you'd see Pinocchio's Daring Journey in the background. Ugh. And that made me cringe a bit, you know, because it's 1961 and that wasn't built till 1983. Fantasyland didn't look anything like it does now or it did in the film because they shot it on location. There's a scene where they're on Main Street and you can see Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln out of focus in the background. It wasn't at the park yet at that point, and it's just those little things like the Main Street Cinema is showing, you know, the Mickey Mouse titles when back in those days it showed short silent films, but that kind of stuff is unavoidable. I mean, there's only so much CGI can do, obviously, and, you know, to redecorate the whole, it would have probably been more trouble than it was worth. What's not forgivable is, it just bothered me so much. There's a scene where Pamela Travers first gets to her hotel room, and it's, you know, surrounded by Disney memorabilia. There's Mickey dolls and Donald's and everything, and she picks up a Winnie the Pooh doll, and she says, "Poor A.A. Milne," and she throws it to the ground. Well, the first Winnie the Pooh short wasn't released until '66. And this film takes place in '61. It's possible he had the rights then, but I really doubt he was making plush toys if the film wouldn't be out for another 5 years. What bugged me about that joke is you could have very easily done it to any other, you know, British author. She could have picked up, you know, a Peter Pan doll or a Tinkerbell doll and said, "Poor James Barrie." She could have picked up an Alice or Mad Hatter doll and said, "Poor Lewis Carroll." Hell, you know, she could have even picked up a Snow White doll and said, "The Poor Grimm Brothers." You know, I get what they're going for, but did you have to use a property that wasn't even a film yet? There's a few plot holes in this movie, by the way. I mean, there's a scene early on, and it's in the trailer, where, you know, Don DeGrotty says Mary, and she corrects him, "Mary Poppins, never ever just Mary." Then it shows her okaying the Jolly Holiday song. Not the sequence, which she doesn't know is animated yet, but the song. Now that song, one of the big refrains is, "It's a Jolly Holiday with Mary." And they rhyme Mary with a bunch of stuff. So, I don't know, maybe that's a deleted scene, maybe where they convince her to just call her by Mary a lot. But like I said, there were several details I did like. It's such a little thing, but it's so perfect. I loved the scene where Walt Disney is kind of describing what the film he will have, and he uses the word things. You know, it'll have, you know, penguins and something and things, you know, which is how Walt talked back then. It was a subtle little touch, but it worked so well. He basically follows P.L. Travers back to London, knocks on the door of her house, and sits down and basically just says really why he wants to make Mary Poppins, and it is kind of manipulative, but it's also very, very persuasive. Then it almost instantly flashes forward to 3 years later. Walt is being asked by his secretary, should we invite P.L. Travers to the Hollywood premiere? And he says, "No, I don't want her there because you know how she is, and you know, I've got to protect the movie, there's going to be press there, and blah, 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 blah." And it's like, well, that's kind of a dick move, you know, and I did appreciate that the film had a dick move from Walt. You know, it didn't just cast him as this angel. Speaking of Walt, We barely saw him smoke in this film. In fact, we don't see him smoke. We don't see him put a cigarette to his lips at all. There's a scene where P.L. Travers barges into his office and, and Walt's just putting out a cigarette. And he says, I don't like to smoke around my, office. I don't like to encourage bad habits. Horse shit! Walt smoked around everybody. It was the 60s. Everyone smoked. Everyone drank. Have you ever fucking watched Mad Men? Everyone smoked at Disneyland. There were no smoking areas at Disneyland. It's just everyone was allowed to smoke. It was outdoors. The poster says PG-13 for unsettling images, which I thought meant smoking. Turns out, the most unsettling image this film has is one of the flashback scenes where Colin Farrell, as P.L. Travers' dad, is dying, and there's a scene where he coughs up blood. Pretty unsettling, I'll give you that. I don't know why it was entirely necessary. Maybe that's how... I don't know enough about her backstory. Maybe that is how her dad died, and they wanted to be honest to that. And there's a scene after he's already died where young P.L. Travers goes by his side and kind of holds the hand of the dead body. And, I guess that's a little unsettling, but it's just Mufasa with a human. We saw that in The Lion King, and that was rated G. Hunchback of Notre Dame was rated G, for God's sakes, and that had the Hellfire sequence. So let's talk about the ending. As I feared, they basically glossed over the fact that P.L. Travers didn't like the film. It ends on such a kind of note. They're at it's weird to say about literally the premiere of Mary Poppins, one of the most beloved movies of all time. And it shows P.L. Travers sitting in her seat, and she's rolling her eyes at the animated penguins, which was a huge sticking point for her, and it was in real life. And it comes to the scene where Dick Van Dyke is talking to the kids about their father. They build Cage of all shapes and sizes, I feel sorry for him. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And it shows her crying. Now, ostensibly, the film implies that she's crying not because she loves the film, but because she's remembering her own father. I think that's a little cheap, to be honest. I really wasn't buying it. It's like, no, she wouldn't have cried during this movie. And, Walt kind of leans in and says, it's okay, Mr. Banks will be all right. And she says, no, I can't stand animation. And I guess it's supposed to be a joke, and it's pretty stupid. So I'll probably see the film again to see if my opinion changes on it, but I liked it a lot. The Disney fanboy in me really, really appreciated that this film was made and that it has as much detail that it gets right as it does. I just wish it wasn't so sentimental. Oh, she cried at the premiere. I don't think she would have cried at the premiere. But like I said, Emma Thompson is great. Tom Hanks, he's not Walt Disney, but still a great Tom Hanks performance. And I love Schwartzman and Novak as the Sherman brothers. I would have loved to see more of them in this movie, quite frankly. And, again, I recommend it if you're a huge Disney fan, but if you're a huge Disney fan, you're probably gonna see it already. And now, once again, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Will Smith!
Do you think we'll ever see her again?
I'm sure we will, honey. I'm sure we will.